Welcome to the Queen City Music Podcast, the podcast devoted to the local music scene in Charlotte, North Carolina. Now, here's your host, Matthew Ablin.
Hello and welcome to episode 83 of the Queen City Music Podcast. This episode of the QCMP is sponsored by Midwood Guitar Studio, Charlotte, North Carolina's own boutique guitar shop located in Plaza Midwood. Midwood Guitar Studio not only has the finest selection of boutique guitars, but familiar names like Fender, Martin, Taylor, Two-Rock, and many others. Whether it's a guitar, bass, amp, effects pedal, or a much-needed accessory, the knowledgeable and friendly staff at Midwood Guitar Studio will help guide you in the right direction for your next purchase. And Midwood Guitar Studio also has a luthier on staff for all your repair needs. Visit their website at midwoodguitarstudio.com or stop in to see their unique shop at 1517 Central Avenue, Charlotte, North Carolina. By the way, if you have a business and would like to become a sponsor of the podcast like our friends at Midwood Guitar Studio, drop me a line at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com and I'll discuss all the information with you. Also, if you enjoy listening to the podcast and want to find out more about me, stop by MatthewAblin.com. There you'll find links to all my events, performance groups, the latest podcast episodes, and a host of other information. Happy February, everyone. 2025 is now well underway. This month on episode 83 of the QCMP, I'm pleased to be speaking with independent artist Joe May. You may remember Joe from episode 40 of the QCMP when he was on with several band members from his group Pluto Gang. This month, Joe's back talking about his dive into becoming a solo artist, his new single, upcoming album, and studio Altamira. Joe May, welcome back to the Queen City Music Podcast.
Charlotte, North Carolina, we have liftoff.
Good to see you again, man. I haven't seen you. The last time you were on the podcast was, 4 years ago, and you were on like episode 40.
Whoa,
and
dude, you've done like 40 episodes.
Yeah, I'm
one a month.
This is episode 83.
That's like one a month for like 4 years.
I'm on this is going into year 8 of the Queen City Music Podcast.
Awesome.
So I'm happy I've gotten to meet like a ton of people. But you were on with your group, Pluto Gang.
Yep.
And then we haven't seen each other because you brought it up. I totally forgot. We saw each other at the, Jazz's Lead show at Middle C Brewing, Middle C Jazz, not Middle C Brewing, excuse me.
I always mix Triple C and Middle C up.
I do.
And I'm really good friends with the people that work at both of them too,
Yeah.
so I really should not be making that mistake.
Just sorry, guys.
Yeah.
But they're not our sponsor anymore, so I can mess it up. I'm allowed to. But anyway, we saw each other there, and then we haven't seen each other for a while. But you reached out and you're like, Matt, I'm doing this new stuff. Can I come on and talk? And I was like, absolutely. So first off, let's see what's going on. What happened with Pluto Gang? Are you still with them? You still doing shows? Did you guys kind of go different ways, or are you on hiatus?
We're on hiatus, but like, I mean, I think we sent about 100 text messages to each other yesterday, just talking about what we want to do, just scheming about, like, laughing, whatever. Like, what are you guys up to? So, we're just not playing right now.
Right.
I mean, we're at the age where people are starting families.
Right.
Someone had to move for work, so we're just in different cities.
Oh, wow.
And we did like a reunion show last year, and that was really fun, where we flew Dylan down and then played a show at the Visualite.
Okay.
And it was huge. Like, so many people came to the show.
Yeah.
So I think that's our pace right now, is people are in different cities starting families, and once a year we'll all come back to Charlotte.
Right.
Most of us are still here.
Okay.
And then we'll get together, play a show, maybe record something.
And see what's happening.
Nothing but positive, amicable things, but also just creating space for us to live our own lives and come together as friends when we want to and make music.
That's awesome, man. I think sometimes too many people get into groups and then, something happens and then there's just too much infighting and stuff. And that's good that you're able to remain friends, even things are on hiatus. So it's,
for sure.
It's difficult to find friends, and it's also difficult to find musical people that you like playing with.
Well, we were all friends before we were a band.
Oh, that makes it a plus.
We were in college bands together.
Okay.
Like, I was in a college band with Brennan, Dylan would come down. I was in a college band with Pat. So we had all been playing together since we were like 18.
Oh, wow.
Dylan and Brennan had been in like middle school chorus together. So like, our lives were inextricably tangled already by the time that we started playing music.
So the roots run deep.
Yeah, it was good.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. That is awesome. Well, let's dig in, because when you were on a number of years ago, I don't know if we dug into everybody's background musically really too deeply. I
don't believe we did.
There were a few guys on the podcast, and we kind of
it was me, Brennan, and Dylan that did it. And it was right after the pandemic started.
Yes.
Because we were like a pandemic band, so we were doing it on Zoom. So.
Yep. I remember that because there are a few people. And it's funny enough, since you're on this month, last month, Greasy Keys was on.
Nice.
And Jason, when he was on the podcast, he was right from the pandemic too. So it's kind of funny. I haven't decided what I'm going to do this year, but maybe I'll catch up with all the people I talked to during the pandemic and be like, where are you now? What are you doing? What's happening?
Yeah, Well, I have a physical form. You'd be surprised.
Oh my gosh. All right. So let's dig in, man.
Yep.
So what's your music background?
What is my music background?
Hold on. Freeze. Hold on. Let's go to the first question I ask everybody, even though we did in the Pluto Gang. Are you originally from the Charlotte area?
No.
Where are you from,
well,
man?
I've lived here for like 8 years now, so this is definitely home in my eyes.
Mm-hmm. I think I know where you're from, but I want the audience to know.
I'm from all over. I was born in Rio, in Brazil.
Okay.
And spent the first 5 years of my life there.
Mm-hmm. Do you speak Portuguese?
I do speak Portuguese. I was actually just back home 3 weeks ago with all my family.
Okay.
So
I've followed you on Facebook, so I know you were traveling.
All my mom's family's down in Rio. And we came together. We have cousins in the U.S., cousins in Mexico, cousins in Brazil. Like, we are all getting together. It was just awesome. So, that's like home in like the origin existential sense.
Okay.
Lived all over in the U.S. since then, but my parents have been in Raleigh since 2008, and then I moved to Charlotte in 2017.
And what brought you down to Charlotte? Was it school or was it buddies? Or
yeah, after I graduated from college, I just got a job here, and then
and then came down.
And then it's good. And then after a couple of years, you realize then you're friends with the people at the yoga studio, friends with the people at the deli. You can pop into a show, and then your bandmates are probably there, and then all of a sudden you realize that you're like surrounded by a lot of people you really like, and
there you go.
And then that's home. So
it is. I was just talking with a good buddy of mine yesterday, and I went to Cleveland, Ohio. I lived in Cleveland for a number of years for grad school, and we were joking about it, but I was like, no, and I mean, in all seriousness, I probably would have never left Cleveland if I had found a particular job there. Yep. I said, I really enjoyed living in that city. It was a great town, but coming down to Charlotte, now it's home. I mean, I've set down roots here. There's no reason for me to go anywhere else at this point, you know, and particularly doing music stuff, you know, you start to get to know the scene, you start to get to know people, and it's like, well.
And the scene is better than it's ever been.
That is the truth, man.
Yeah,
that is
something about the pandemic really activated a desire, I think, for community and collaboration. Things felt competitive for a long time.
Really?
That's what I felt with like Pluto Gang stuff early on. And now I feel only community collaboration where everyone's like, let's play together, let's do this, let's record on each other's stuff. Maybe I was just new to the scene.
Yeah.
But like we would like try to do stuff, and then people didn't always want to like book shows together, play together.
Interesting.
But now I think everyone's just excited to have a community and a group of friends that make music together.
I mean, I'm in a different. I found that the Charlotte scene is. When I first got here, I was here in 2006.
Okay.
There wasn't a large scene.
Yeah.
And there were only a handful of places to play. And the local musicians who were already established in Charlotte were playing there. And then as the city grew, more people moved here.
Yep.
And they could were not able to get into those older places, but there were newer places popping up. So the new musicians went there,
nice.
And the old musicians, I think, found it hard to get into newer places because they hadn't made inroads in them when the old places closed. To my point, I think the Charlotte scene is a little bit compartmentalized. Like I
think any city's going to be that way.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who do solo acoustic stuff because I do solo acoustic covers.
Yep.
So I know a lot of people in that community.
Totally.
I don't do a lot of original music shows, so I don't know tons of original artists except by doing the podcast.
Totally.
So I'd be willing to bet, I could be wrong, that you know probably more people in the original music scene than you do all the cover people.
Hundreds of us.
There you go.
Yeah, it's great.
There you go. So that's kind of it. You know, it's an interesting scene, but I digress. How did you get into music, man? Were you into it when you were younger? How did that work?
I think it was osmoted into the air around me, into my cerebral cortex and cerebellum, without any conscious uptake or reuptake decisions. I think I was floating in the vat of music, unbeknownst to me.
Did your parents introduce you? Did you have an older brother?
My dad
older
was
sibling?
a professional musician.
Oh, okay.
So he still plays. He's not doing it for a living anymore.
Right.
But like, I always say that I grew up on either his shoulders watching a show or my mom's shoulders watching him play. And that was in Brazil, and then we came, and then he was playing all the time.
What did he play? What kind of instrument or sing?
Drums and like jazz, Latin percussion.
Okay.
So the percussion was really his wheelhouse for a long time. That's where I think he got the most and the best gigs. Mm-hmm. But he is a killer drum kit player.
That's awesome. Does he play in any of your recordings at all?
Yeah, he's played percussion on the new album. He played percussion on the last album.
Oh, that's great.
Like I sneak him into everything.
That is awesome.
And I'll always ask him about it, and then we'll make plans. And then I'll like go to Raleigh with like a bunch of mics. He's like, "Wait, what are we doing?" I was like, "You're playing on my album, dude." Like, he's like, "Oh, did I agree to that? I guess I'll do it."
All right, I got to pay you, Dad. Here you go. Here's $5. I'll take you to lunch.
Yeah, exactly. If you got a place that has $5 lunch anymore, please tell me where it is.
So do you do any percussion at all? Because I know you as a singer, and I know you as a keyboard player.
Drums are my first instrument.
Okay.
So I grew up playing drums. I played drumline in high school. I was in marching band, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then in drumline, they would make us switch to like xylophone in the winter. So once marching band season ended,
right,
there was no football games and parades to play at. So we still had the class for the whole year. So then we had to learn how to play like the xylophone, the marimba. Well, I learned all the scales. And then I had a dinky little piano at home. My parents got me like a nice piano in college.
Right.
And I just started running with it and just figuring it out. But also I think like my dad was it still is such a good drummer. That I think when I was really young, I was like self-conscious about learning the instrument around someone who was so good at it. So it was really easy for me to like grab another instrument and then be like, I'm going to get independently good at this. Like, not like good, but I'm going to figure it out.
Right.
And there's just more space to explore. Like I love harmony.
Mm-hmm.
So like that appealed to the part of my brain that that grew up listening to the Beatles and Crosby, Stills, Nash and loves figuring out harmonies. Then I could play them, and then I'm a big math nerd, and I could see the distance between notes and look at things kind of geometrically, and then I fell in love with it.
So are you primarily self-taught doing music? Yeah. That's awesome.
Well, I mean, no, I mean, the drums I've been like trained.
Okay, from your father, yeah.
Piano I've figured out
how to do it all.
I did one semester of jazz lessons in college. Mm-hmm. I think I've failed out of piano lessons like 5 times in my life with like 5 professors. Once when I was like a little kid, and they're like, your hands got to get bigger, you got to grow up more, and then you come. And I was like, all right, and then they try to do it again. They're like, all right, learn this arabesque #1 song, and I was like, I don't want to play this crap. And then tried again in high school, and I was like already like learning songs by ear and figuring out like I'd figured out Stairway to Heaven, like the whole intro, and they're like, all right, now you're gonna learn this Bach piece. I was like, look, but I can do this. Then it happened again in college. I tried to go learn and take lessons, and they're like, sight read this. I was like, I can't do it. So
I think,
but along the way, I was playing in bands and just figuring it out.
And that's a great thing, man. I think the problem with some teachers is that they adhere to tradition a little bit too much.
Yeah.
So,
Rigidity.
This is the way I've been taught, and this is the way everybody else is going to learn. You have to do this classical thing.
Yeah. I like structure, but I don't love rigidity. So, just had to figure it out.
And that's okay, man. I mean, there's a beauty in learning it. Like, recently, in the last couple of years, I started learning the Middle Eastern oud.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And, I take some lessons with this guy, and he actually lives in Japan. I'll give him a shout out. It's oud for guitars. His name's Naveed Goldrick,
awesome.
And awesome guy. And one of the things that makes it a lot easier for me is being able to read music. I couldn't imagine taking a lesson with him and having him how to show me how to play every note. Like, he's like, here's the music. And I'm like, okay. All I need to know is where the notes are. All right, this is good. I could do this already. Yeah. And I haven't played guitar for my gosh, 40 something years, I'm like, this is okay. I could do this. This is easy. I know.
See, that's every band I've been in where we're like trying to learn a song and someone's like, wait, the lick is bow da bow bow, and then the other players they're like, no, but I hear do da da do, and then the key, I'm like, no, it's ba da ba ba. We're all like singing like just one note apart from each other, trying to figure out where it is.
Yeah, that's one of the beauties of being able to read music.
Yeah,
for me, and then
I can read rhythm.
Yeah.
Like, I can follow, but then I don't know where the notes are.
It's worth doing a little bit of investigating, I think, anyway. I am not, and I will never say I am this, like, genius sight reader. I knew guys when I studied in grad school who could read classical guitar music, like chords and stuff. And they're just, like, moving their hands around and they're reading. I'm like, holy crap. But, you know, me reading single lines, I'm like, oh, I could do this, or I could figure this out. I could do this. I could read it at a decent level where I'm like, I can get through.
Yeah.
You know? So it makes it, and being able to write out charts and stuff, it's such a pleasure to be able, like, here's a G chord. Let me write this, put this in it.
I've never been good at practicing or spending time with other people's ideas.
But you have practiced, and we'll get into that because you have a studio, so you know a lot of stuff about that. So that's a practice in its own way.
Totally.
So, and
that's praxis. I like that praxis? One. Doing it.
Yeah, I mean, there's a practicality of doing it because you enjoy it, and you wouldn't get good. You have a voice, and you're good at singing. So
recently discovered that one.
You and me both.
That was one of the questions. I know.
That was one of the questions. Yeah. Well, all right. So you're on keyboards, but when did you start singing? Weren't you singing in Pluto Gang?
I sang the mid harmonies in Pluto Gang.
Okay.
I sang the David Crosby harmonies.
Okay.
Because Dylan and Brennan were locked in. They were like, Brennan knew his range.
Right.
Dylan was always above him, singing like the alto part.
Okay.
And I'm just a tenor, so I just go right below the two of them. So I did that. I mean, like, harmony just makes sense to me.
Yes.
Like, I grew up when we'd be on road trips, like, we would, like, harmonize to Beatles songs in the car. Oh, so it's like, amazing. It's just, like, kind of second nature to me to, like, be able to grab one of the parts and not be like it's never like, this is the third, this is the fifth. It's just like, there's the high harmony and the low harmony, and you just grab one. So, like, I knew how to do that.
Yeah.
So I didn't have, like, training or vocabulary around it, but, like, 25 years of practice by the time we were playing shows. And
I didn't start singing until I was in my mid-30s. And I didn't even think I had a voice.
Really?
Yeah, and it wasn't until I started in grad school, I was started to become a music educator. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to have to learn how to sing. And I started doing it, and I was like, well, I can sing. I was kind of singing in some guitar lessons when I taught my students. But now I'm like, it's funny playing a gig, and people are like, I love your voice. And I'm like,
yeah, you've got a lot of air in your voice, though, so it'd be perfect to sing.
I try. You know, I think I'm okay. I'm sit there and be like, I'm this great singer. But it's the one thing I struggle with is harmonies. Like, I never practice it, and maybe I should, but like when I sing with my buddy, I can sing the harmony part that I have figured out for that song. Yeah. And that's not a problem, but picking it out, like, out of the air.
I had the opposite. Singing lead for, like, when I started doing this and playing my own music. Yeah. Singing lead was crazy. 'Cause, like, if I'm listening to a song in the car, I'm singing the harmonies on it. I've never sang the lead parts ever in my life. So, like, I throw on a song and I'm grabbing the harmony above or below it. Always. I'm harmonizing with, I'm like participating in the song that I'm listening to and not duplicating it.
So you can just do above or below. It's not even an issue for you, right?
Yeah, I just grab the part.
Interesting. That's great. A lot of people would just say, I'm going to go for the higher part. That's normally what I do, and that's it. And then they might struggle with the lower part, you know?
Yeah. High is hard. I mean, I've got a pretty low voice for singing in general. But, so then, like, when we started, like, doing this project, we would, like, start playing a song, and I would start singing the harmony, like, because it was just, that's where my brain would go. Okay. Especially with covers, too. Like, we would do, like, we were doing this McCartney cover, and I would always try to, like, harmonize with it. Not even hearing the lead, like, that's just where my brain would go in that song. Mm-hmm. So it took, like, a while to deprogram. And I did a little bit of vocal lessons, too, here in town. Okay. And that helped a lot, just with the confidence, too. Yeah.
Well,
but
you're naked.
Also playing 30 shows helped more with the confidence than anything else.
Well, that's the one thing. When you start singing solo and you're not doing background vocals,
Yeah.
or I should say singing lead, you're now the front and you are, you're out there naked, as it were.
I feel like the piano is a good buffer, actually.
It is.
I never feel too exposed.
Yeah.
Like people that stand with a boom mic and sing, that blows my mind. But ultimately, like I am pushing buttons on a machine that generates sound, and that is between me and the listener.
Yeah.
So I never feel too, like, I feel in flow rather than like exposed. Pretty much all the time.
That's good. That's a good way to think about it. Cause I play guitar and sing. So for me, it's very similar and I lean into my guitar, but it's always weird to me when I think I was saying earlier, people compliment me on my voice and they're not complimenting on guitar playing.
That's the weirdest thing to me. Well, cause that always we were playing a festival and someone was like, they're like, your vocals weren't that loud. You've got an amazing voice. I was like, oh, like I'm just singing because someone has to. like, but you hear all the cool stuff I was doing with the keys, and people just don't perceive it.
Yes,
but like I've always been that way. Like I don't know the lyrics to most of my favorite songs. Like,
really,
vocals have always been like a rhythmic thing for me. Like it's like the rhythm and the harmony is what I hear, and I don't ever really realize what they're saying or why they're saying it.
Interesting.
And now I'm like tuning into all this, like a whole world. I started being the lead singer in a band, and I was like, oh, whoa, like. Wait, there's people are like putting a lot of time and energy into this.
Oh, yeah, the lyrics. Oh my gosh, yeah. And then writing out the melody and figuring that out and how you want that to go. And then, yeah, I mean, you do a deep dive into anything, you start realizing there's a heck of a lot more going on than you think. Like, you listen to a Beatles album or something like that, and you could just hear the song. And then you just put on some headphones, and all of a sudden you're like, I never heard that shaker in there.
Yeah.
I never heard this in the back. Wait. And you start hearing things that you never really got into, Well,
with those, it's cool because they literally probably had someone standing behind Ringo playing a shaker, and it is physically distant from the mic, not only in the mix.
That's true. That is true.
That is some cool. It was probably Mal Evans back there, their roadie, just.
You look at this.
And they had one mic above the drum kit.
That was a different time for recording, man.
Yep.
Really different time.
Yep.
All right. So you get into singing and you're starting to get your own thing going on.
I've been writing for a long time though. So like I had been like writing and singing my own songs for years. Like I wrote.
When did you start? When you were a kid? Start writing your own stuff?
I would like write like silly raps in like middle and high school.
Right.
I think I started taking it seriously in like 2018.
Okay.
Me and my buddy would like send poems back and forth, start figuring out rhythms. And then we started doing it, and then I was writing for Pluto Gang, and then I started writing a ton of music that didn't sound like Pluto Gang, and then I started kind of building my own stuff that was just kind of sitting there.
Yeah.
And that's what like that record I did 2-3 years ago was. It was just the songs that I had that didn't fit into the Pluto Gang sound, and I've been sitting them forever. What I've been working on now, this upcoming record that'll come out in this spring, summer of 25, this is like the first one that feels like my record. Like this, like I know what I do. I know what I want to sound like. I have the people that I play with. Let's find my sound. This is like the first time I've ever felt that way.
Well, let's dig into it. What's the songwriting process like for you? You sit down and you're just sitting at the keyboards. Are you writing lyrics? You're coming up with a melody. How do you start to write it?
It's changed a lot over the years.
Okay.
And it's funny because now I've like already finished writing album 4. I will probably start recording that later this year.
Wait. You only got, this is the second album coming out now in May, right?
Sorry, album 3. Album 3. I was counting the first Pluto Gang in my head. First Pluto Gang album is one.
Threw me for a loop. We were just
my
talking
bad.
Solo kind of stuff. All right, so third solo album you got, but all right, so you got the first one. But when did you start? What's your songwriting process?
Every album has been so different. It used to be that I would write loops on my keyboard, and I would create loops.
Okay.
And me and my buddy Kevin would just send each other poems back and forth in lines, and we'd just brainstorm on it. Sometimes we'd meet up, like we spent a weekend in the mountains in Virginia and just wrote a bunch of this stuff, and that kind of became the first Pluto Gang record. And then we added in a bunch of Dylan's tunes too.
Okay.
But the process used to be start with the instrumentation and then write a poem and then fit the poem melodically over the instrumentation.
Gotcha.
That's what it started off as. Then we started doing more of like it just comes to you. Like we come up with something and then just start doing it. Lately the process has been, and I've been writing a lot more of like full lyrics myself and full melody myself. Whereas I've always collaborated with my buddy Kevin. We've split everything and have been doing it for like 7 years now. So we can read each other's minds a little bit. And that's super fun. And we like the same things and have a lot of the same shared experiences.
Okay.
So it's easy for us to like pick up on the thoughts or the experiences. And so that's always been a great partnership. But lately I've been doing a lot more of just like start to finish doing it the whole thing myself.
Okay.
And that's always, I'm playing something and I find just a groove that feels good. And I just start like singing gibberish to myself for hours.
Yeah.
And I'll just be like,
over the chord changes
yeah,
you come up
and
with.
I'll just be playing, like I was playing this groove the other day and I started going, ba-da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. And I'd do that and then I'd find like a word and then all of a sudden it's like, da-da-da-da, morning and a ba-da-ba-da-da-da. And then I find one word that fits syllabically.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, what do I wanted this to be about?
It's interesting because different people have different approaches to writing. And I'm always curious. I've met people who write lyrics first. They have like a whole book of just lyrics that they write down. And then I would find that extremely difficult to try to take the words and match them with the music. It's like I go through a similar process that you're going through. You're writing chords and the melody just starts rolling
just
in your
automatic.
head. Yeah. And you just start writing it down.
Yeah. We're a black box of our lived experience and listened experiences, and you all of a sudden hear something and then you take the thousands of songs you've heard and create your extrapolation of it. Like that should be an automatic process.
It should be, but I mean, everybody is going to kind of deal with it a little differently, you know? And I know there's, non-instrumentalists who are just straight up vocalists.
Yeah.
And somebody will the guitar player will be like, here's the riff. And the guy would just be like, okay, let me live with this riff for the weekend and I'll come up with something.
Crazy.
And then they just start writing stuff down.
For me, the emotion of the song is decided by the chords that I decide to play.
Yeah.
And so it always starts with that. That usually decides the emotions. And then I have a list on my phone called Random Inspiration, full of I have to have hundreds of, it's things that I hear in passing that I think are cool. And I mean, I'll scroll through this. There are hundreds of items in here.
Are you backing that up?
Yeah, it's all my cloud. And a lot of these have turned into songs. So what I'll do is if I write an instrumental and I don't know where to start with the lyrics, I will just scroll and grab one. Oh, I grabbed Velvet Marauders. That one's already turned into a song. Oh, and there's Vitamin D in the Shade. That one's turned into another song. But I could just grab a single one and there is Periwinkle and Indie Gold. And then I have to figure out what that's going to be. So it could be a title
or it could be a line of the song?
Yeah, I have no clue what they're going to be, but I just...
That's great. I actually just keep a little sketchbook and write stupid stuff down.
Yeah. Spiraling Up. So I just grab one of these and then that'll usually decide what direction to go in. And then it's just free flowing. I never know where they're going to end up.
That's awesome, man. So when you started writing, you had all the stuff that were outside of Pluto Gang, you said, and that started to make it onto the first album.
Yep.
So I wouldn't call it pressure, but did you feel the need to put that outside of Pluto Gang to be able to express yourself?
Oh, completely.
Because I imagine playing in a group, you have all these other people you're running stuff by, and then everybody else is adding their magic to it. But when it's a solo recording, now it's on you, and you've got to figure out the direction of it. So how did that feel for you doing the first recording?
That's great. Control and direction have never been issues for me. I think sometimes I struggle more with the collaboration than the driving.
How so?
I just have a lot of things that I want to do.
Okay.
And then sometimes once I've decided to do something, sometimes I want to just do it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to always change it 50 ways.
Because I've said it before, for me, I started writing some music and I was trying to write with my friend John, and we were going to do some original stuff. And then I started writing and I found it really difficult to write. So I'd come up with some stuff and he'd be like, oh, that's great, let's do this. And we'd start, and then I'd have writer's block and I couldn't come up with another part, right? So he'd be sitting around waiting for me. And I was like, well, this is just crazy, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want to just come up with something right now because it might not be anything that I like. Or I couldn't come up with something. I'm like, you're going to sit around for an hour while I putz around on the guitar? I was like, that's just stupid.
Okay.
So I started writing these songs and it was just mine at a point.
Totally.
And I was like, all right, I'm just going to write this. And there's also something nice about where you put something out in the world and it's yours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's nobody
that's
else's stamp on it per
It's
se.
kind of tough for me too, because I like putting my name on stuff is tough for me. And I've struggled with this a lot in the past, especially like when we perform live.
Mm-hmm.
Like we perform live as like Joe May's Month of Mondays. And I talk to the band a lot, and I'm always trying to like balance. I'm like, how much of this is either me fearing becoming the center of attention versus me wanting to like include the band members, which I do. I want to make them feel included in a part of it rather than just like try to just put myself in the limelight. So that's like one weird thing is like putting your name on it. But all these projects become like questions of identities for me. So like once I'm like, and I deal with this with every project I work on, where if I spend a year working on something and like pouring myself into it, feeling like I'm like becoming like a little reclusive sometimes from my social communities. And then I feel like I am this album, and it's like my identity is fully linked to this project. And then once I'm like done with it, I have this feeling that is like, no one will know who I am until I put this out. And this is something I talk to my therapist a lot. And she's like, people will perceive the wholeness of you, like no matter what, and whether you package it or present it differently. But I do have this thing where I was like, when Pluto Gang was ending, I was like, I have to put this album out or else no one will like perceive me the way I perceive myself. Like no one will know like who, and it's total fear, right?
I think it's an artist driven thing where you feel compelled to put a piece of you out into the world, but that piece of you with a recording, a friend of mine said it best, and I always steal it. When you put out something, I don't care if it's a song, but more related to an album, a recording. Yeah. It is where you are at that point in your life.
Totally.
And then you release it. Whatever. Let's say you went through tragedy or you went through a series of wonderful events, whatever it is, that signifies that point in your life.
Yeah.
And then all these other things happen to you until you write the next recording.
Yep.
And that's who you are at that point. So the albums are just different segments in your life.
Yeah.
That you release.
I like the word releasing. You release the album. You both release it from a marketing and commerce sense.
That is a good way.
And also from an emotional sense.
Yeah.
You know, take your hands off it. It's no longer yours.
Yeah. Well, you
So
could
like
go
that.
crazy trying to perfect it, right?
I spent the last year doing that. I recommend it to no one.
Are you just when it comes to recording, and I want to talk about the first recording, but are you a perfectionist? Meaning, do you let little errors in the recording go, or do you need it to be like perfect?
I've done a big 180 with this. So that first solo album that I made 2 years ago, I was just learning so much. That was me learning how to do what I wanted to do.
Right.
That was a learning album.
The writing or the recording or
every
everything?
Single thing was me learning, figuring it out. And that was like we were tracking everything in isolation. So like I'd get like a drum loop going and then I'd track my keyboards and then someone would come over and play bass and we'd take the verse 3 times and take the chorus 3 times and I'd take the best one of all of them.
Right.
And everything was steeped in perfection. And ultimately I feel like that is a sterile album.
Right.
So I don't like that.
I liked it.
Yeah, it accomplishes what it was trying to do. It just doesn't. Again, I released it, and now I've had different experiences since then.
Sure, absolutely. But I mean, you're going to grow as an artist, as a musician, and knowing recording. I mean, you're doing all the recording stuff yourself, so everything is getting better. But when I mean perfection,
that's where I'm going. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
The new album that we just recorded, "Ignoring the Feeling" being the first single off this upcoming album.
Yeah.
I should have prefaced that. I put out a single last week called "Ignoring the Feeling."
Yeah.
For those that have not heard it. And it is a very poppy, horn-driven rock tune. That album, we recorded everything live. So we were in a room together, making eye contact, tracking analog. And when we got the take, that was the take.
Okay.
So if someone's playing something, there's all this stuff where like someone will add like a spicy chord or a run, and it could have happened seconds before the other guitarist also did a similar run, and it creates a weird, cool sound. That's the stuff that we get that we would have never gotten if we had done everything in isolation.
Right.
So there is all of this, like a degree of chaos that I like a lot now. Mm-hmm. I call it like throwing the ball up in the air and seeing where it lands. Mm-hmm. So like we got in a room, we started playing music, and if it felt good, it was good.
Right.
And whatever notes we played, that's what we got. We were not, no one was curating note for note. We played it, and we moved on. Same with the horns.
All right, on that note, we're going to come back and talk about that, but can we take a listen to Ignoring the Feeling?
Let's do it.
All right, this is Ignoring the Feeling by Joe May, his new single.
Ignoring the feeling, feel it in your bones. When you're feeling alone, you never believe that. When you're out on your own, you may not perceive it. When you feel far from home, then one day you realize, looking up at the sky, that it wasn't so high. Twinkling in your eye, now everyone you meet is an opportunity towards paradise. 'Cause you can be whatever you please. You can do what you choose and enjoy everything between. You can go outside and create your own destiny. Yeah, knowing you can do anything. Why can't
Joe, that's a fantastic track, man. A little bit poppier than I would have expected, because I listened to the first album, and the first one had a more, what I thought was a more Steely Danish sound, especially with the keyboards. But you were kind enough to give me a preview of the new album, and it's got that same kind of Steely Danish kind of vibe to it, which I like. But this is one of those tracks that's a little different. It's got more of that poppy, like almost like yacht rock kind of vibe to it.
That's what we're going for.
Was that was your feel?
It's my love letter to classic West Coast big band rock and roll.
Is that kind of where your heart is?
Oh yeah, it's what I grew up on. I'm steeped in this stuff. I love it. I've been telling everyone the tagline is that this album is my love letter to when budgets were at an all-time high and self-awareness was at record lows.
That's great, man. All right, well, tell me about this single. Let's just talk about this. First off, did you write all the stuff for yourself? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Wrote, arranged, recorded, mixed, produced.
Okay. Who's playing on the parts? Are you playing? Did you hire other musicians?
Oh
to
yeah,
play the
there's
parts?
like 15 people playing on this.
Okay.
It's my core band, that like the 5-piece that we play live with.
Okay.
And we cut it live together at my studio, Altamira. So it's me on keys, Logan Damery on drums, Jeremy Mayer on bass, Jake Austin on electric guitar, Ben Burrows on acoustic guitar. Tyler Enslow from Cosmic Collective was engineering, helping with the engineering.
Okay.
Because I couldn't play.
Pushing buttons.
I couldn't play and set up. So him and I were like, I set everything up the night before.
Okay.
And then Tyler ran the session. My buddy Caleb also helped with some of the production of the horns. And then Brad Wilcox, I got in touch with him. He arranged all the horn parts. Mm-hmm. And then he came in to play trumpet, and then brought in two of his friends, Keith and Tim, and they played trombone and sax. We did the horns live too. So they were all in a room together. We were tracking room mics. There's bleed in the whole album. Everything is however we played it, that's what we got. My dad's playing percussion. Yeah, it was a whole
batch of people.
Yeah.
So when you're doing, let's just say, I'm just curious, when you're doing the arranging for the horns, are you writing out or figuring out the melodies that you want and then telling somebody how you do it? Or you be like, I envision horns here. Can you do that for me?
Mostly the latter.
Okay.
So I mean, some of them I'm rather, I was going to say diligent. That's kind. A particular and nitpicky human being. So like I was working with Brad on all of this.
Yeah.
But when I sent the files to Brad, I had already recorded the core band, everything. I had already mixed drums, bass, guitars, keys, and vocals.
Okay.
So I had like a standalone album ready to go.
All right.
That just didn't have horns. But I had left space for him because I would, in the songs, there would be like an empty 16 bars. And I was like, there's going to be a trumpet solo here.
Mm-hmm.
And then there would be like, there was space for them to fit in. Because I knew that it was going to happen eventually, but I had never done it before and I didn't know how to go about it. So I would go to Brad and I'd send him the songs and I'm like, all right, this one, thinking like kind of a Chicago feel, trumpet solo here. I want to have like a big energetic push into the last chorus.
Okay.
And then the next one I'd be like, I want you to do like more of like a British George Martin fanfare in the intro of this one.
Right.
Horns come in halfway through the guitar solo. And then he was good. We would just talk about where we're going to reinforce versus play counter. So like, are we going to reinforce the horns or are we going to play against like the rhythmic nature of it?
Right.
And then he would come up with all of it. He's a genius and a guru, and I've learned so much from Brad Wilcox. And then he'd send me like a digital mock-up with like Sibelius, his computer software, telling me what it's going to sound like with like with like synth horns. And then I'd hear it and I'd be like, okay, I love this, hate this. And then I'd sit down on my piano, like kind of figure out different things. And I'd be like, all right, now let's try this here. I don't know what works here, but I want to go a different direction here. And we'd take it through a couple laps and I'm just so stoked with where it all landed.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing where you're not used to it.
It took months.
I mean, arranging horns and or strings or anything, man. It's another skill. I mean, it's something you can learn to do.
And doing it for the live show. We just played a release show at the Visualite last week.
Okay.
And we had a 9-piece band on stage.
Wow.
And I had never done that before. And that was one of the biggest production attempts I've ever tried in my life. And I was doing like the MDing also on stage, so like calling out the changes in real time. 'Cause like the sheet music is written, but like the five of us, like we play loose. We're improvisers for the most part.
Yeah.
So like if the groove feels good, I want to sit in it for 32 bars and then start the verse. So I was like also had like a second mic and we'd be playing. I was like, pause the count. We're going to groove. Wow. And then I'd be like, all right, the count starts back when I sing the first line, or like listen to the word like pieces. And that's where we're going to start the count on the verse. So I was like playing and singing and leaning over into another mic to like calling out when the counts were like stopping and picking back up.
Is that something you want to do again?
Well, I already have the show went really well and people are booking us. So we're going to do it.
No, I'm just curious. I mean, because I think in a band, and especially in a group like that, if you have your core of people that know what's going on and you're kind of used to that, and then let's say you just hire horn players for a particular show to read off charts, to keep it loose is a little tougher.
Yeah, but they're so good. Like Braxton Bateman, Zach Wheeler, Max Gill, they're all phenomenal. And like Jeremy, our bassist, plays with those dudes all the time. So like there was already we had all played with each other in different contexts.
Okay.
So there was already a connection there. But the problem is like we were never able to get all 9 people together for rehearsal.
Gotcha.
Our sound check was the first rehearsal. And then I thought we were going to play for like 100 people, and then we did like 4 times better than that. And then we were like, all of a sudden there was a huge crowd. We walk on stage and we look at each other like, sweet, we've never played these songs together. Let's do it. Let's figure it out.
All right.
Let's throw the ball in the air and see where it lands.
You did a few rehearsals beforehand, I'm guessing?
Never with the full band.
Oh, wow.
Never once with the full band.
So you were just juggling some plates in the air.
We just got on stage and did it. And it went so good.
How long was the show?
We played like an hour 40.
That's fantastic, man. Why didn't I know about this?
I don't know.
I wasn't on the email list, dude.
I don't think I need to get better about emails.
Yeah, send me an email and let me know. If I'm not gigging, I'll definitely come.
We'll do it again in May.
All right.
I guess the Visualite's going to be mad at me for leaking that information right now.
Well, let me know, and I'll definitely I'll see if I can make it as long as I'm not playing that night in advance. Because doing musician stuff, you're always booking, the year in advance. So, all right, man. So when I was talking about perfection before, I'm just curious because you read a lot about old school musicians.
Okay.
and being a fan of old school musicians that you are, when they'll record something, if there's a mistake sometimes, they'll just leave it because it sounds good.
Yeah.
Did you leave that?
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. You weren't like, no, we've got to go in and re-edit this and get this part.
I mean, if there was like a thing where like very clearly the drums and the guitar stabs hit, like,
right.
I would like line those up, but I'm not like,
you missed that note. We got to get that note clear. Go back and track it.
the takes were the takes.
That's great, man.
What we played is what we get.
I like that.
And I'm very confident that all these dudes are incredible musicians, and I will tell everyone that the guys that I'm playing with are so much better than me, and it's so fun. So I trust whatever they play is the song.
But that is what you want. You don't want to be playing with people. I guess the whole goal as being a musician is you play with people at your level or above.
Yeah.
You never try to play with people who are not on your level, below your level, to up your game.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to sound bad to anybody, but that's just generally the kind of way it is.
Yeah.
Because you're always trying to get better.
I was listening to an interview with Christopher Cross the other day. He was talking about recording his first album, the one with like Ride Like the Wind and Sailing on there. Apparently Eric Johnson and Larry Carlton both played on that album.
Seriously.
And Chris Cross is a great guitarist too.
Yeah.
But they were like, wait, why did you get those two guys? He was like, they're the guys. Like, he's like, I learned so much from being in the room with Larry Carlton. I was like, I want to sit in a room with Larry Carlton. Like,
oh my God. Yeah. Just soaking up. I would love, when I was growing up, it's kind of funny. I started knowing all these names, and I'm like a kid. I don't know if you've ever heard, but Tommy Tedesco, like he is.
It's familiar, but I don't know where from.
He is like the old school, studio guitar player from LA, like way back in the day. And he used to write an article in like Guitar Player magazine. And you'd read it and you'd be like, oh, it's Tommy Tedesco. I know who he is, you know, and he was this old guy. And Steve Lukather, reading about him and all his stuff. And it's so funny that's such a bygone era today, almost, some studio working the way those guys did in that fashion.
They're still out. I think there are drummers. I think that's very alive with drumming.
Yes.
Like there are dudes like Aaron Sterling and Ash Sohn that are still getting called for top 40 hits. And they're back to tracking live drums for like pop music.
Right.
Because these dudes have become so, Aaron Sterling's playing on all the Post Malone stuff. Ash Sohn plays on all the Adele stuff. So like, these guys are back.
Yeah, I know.
But
Ken Yarnoff does
I think they less so all live in one city and have a community. I think they're independent agents that have already name recognition, and people are paying them for that name recognition. And because they just know they'll get a Keith Carlock that plays with Steely Dan is doing a lot of this stuff too. Yeah. I don't know. I see it with drummers. I can't think of a lot of guitarists or keyboard players anymore that have that international name recognition.
Yeah. I mean, maybe because drumming is that's the driving force of everything, you know, and somebody figures I can do what I want.
The hardest one to play and the hardest one to record.
Yeah. I've only in recent years have I really have a real appreciation for drummers and percussionists.
It's the hardest instrument in the whole band.
Now I'm really starting, and I didn't come to that until I started mixing some of my own music, where I really started understanding like, like I get it now, you know. Yeah. Like this is really what drives that song. Like if you don't have that, that's not gonna happen in a song. Not to mention the physicality of playing. You know, it's the feel.
It's so tough. Like I was listening back. I mix a lot for like recording clients too. So I do a lot of recording and mixing work for other bands in my studio.
Yeah,
and it's very funny. Like I'll work on projects and you can hear when a drummer knows how to like hit the same spot on their snare every time. Like you'll work on projects where the snare drum is just like, it's perfect. I don't need to do anything with it.
Yeah.
They're like naturally compressing it with the way they play. It sounds perfect. It's crisp. It's tuned. They tuned it between takes. It's perfect.
Yes.
And then and you'll work on other projects where it's like sometimes they're near the rim, sometimes they're in the middle. And then I don't know how to EQ the snare because sometimes it's brittle, sometimes it's thuddy.
Yeah.
And then you have to get into like just so much curating and treatment. And then you like can't push the highs up because the hi-hats are bleeding in.
Yeah.
And there's like, oh, it's cool.
Well, let's get into it since you mentioned it. Because
Okay.
when we met like 4 years ago with Pluto Gang, I don't know if you had just started getting into the recording thing, like the home recording thing.
I mean, I've been doing it since I was like 17, but never like at this level.
Okay.
Now I feel like I'm like getting competent enough to like take on projects,
Yeah.
charge people what I think is worth the time and energy. Like nowhere near some of the guys at the top level, but
Well, I mean, it's all starting to become, well, I shouldn't say it's all. I like to personally try to keep things locally. So there's, I start to get to know different studios, and it's nice to be able to do that, out of your own home and get a really good quality sound.
yeah.
With a home studio. And I'm really surprised when I meet musicians who don't have any recording, whether it's just recording their drum part or recording a car
I
part.
don't
I'm
think
like,
it's for everyone.
It's not, but I think it's such a wonderful thing to at least get down a basic idea if you're writing some music or if somebody wants you
Yeah.
to play on something. Do you know what I mean?
I agree. I don't think everyone wants to learn it.
Well, it's a learning curve.
Yeah. I think it's just like the time spent. I just know a lot of really good artists that are very happy making a phone memo and then sending it over. And then it'll turn into an amazing thing live and when they record it.
Yeah.
But it's just not worth the time for them. So I think that's fair. And that's like where I want to help too, is like finding those really talented artists that have an economy of time, but an abundance of skill.
Yeah.
And then like coming together and figuring that out with them.
There is that. For me, music is so vast. And there's so much that I want to learn how to do. And my ultimate goal is of writing with my own music, being able to write it, record it, and produce it myself, so I don't have to rely on somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
Which is a positive and a negative, because
I think
music is a game, or is a team effort, when it comes out right.
Yeah. I think it's a personality type. Like I'm looking around the room that we're in. Like I'm in your home studio right now. And I think we have the same affliction a little bit, where I like the tools and the technology around it.
Yes.
It's worth the time for me to become comfortable with those tools.
Yeah.
And I think some people would just rather spend the time with the instrument and not with the ancillary tools.
Right.
But I like I'm looking around and I'm like, I like all of this stuff.
Well, for me, I'm just with the technology, some of it became out of necessity. I wanted to do a podcast. I had to learn how to do the recording. I had to learn how to edit it.
Yep.
And then I'm like, I want to put out my own song. All right, it's just going to be this. Well, let's do this. And then you start, you go down that rabbit hole slowly but surely.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And there comes a point where, not that I don't want to get better on a guitar, but I've reached a point where I can do most of the stuff that I want to do on a guitar.
I don't think I'm going to get any better at piano.
And that's it. Do you need to be Rachmaninoff on the piano?
I think I'm only just good enough to be able to have an idea and express it. That's kind of where I've reached with the piano.
Is that where you want to be?
No, but I'm never going to take the time to get beyond it.
And that's where it comes down to.
And I don't sit around and transcribe Cannonball Adderley solos and learn all the jazz stuff. I don't sit down and do that. And nor do I want to take the time. I can barely take the time out of my day to like meditate in the morning. All right? So.
See, I find some of that very fun.
I don't like it.
It's so challenging because.
But producing?
Well,
I can spend all day studying.
But it's all comes to, there's different musical outlets.
Yeah.
Right? The production end of it is one thing. And then, like I told you before, I started learning Middle Eastern oud.
Yep.
And like the guy I take lessons with, I'd be like, can you play that part for me? Even though I've got the music, you've ornamented it. And I'll go back and I'll listen to it. I'll transcribe it.
Yeah.
Oh my, I have such it's bliss sometimes just having fun transcribing it and writing it down. I'm like, I did that. It's almost the same as writing a song.
I hate it.
Really?
I want pure free flow of ideas. I don't ever want to I want to improvise for hours. I try to transcribe or read music and I shut down within 5 minutes and then I won't play for the rest of the day.
Wow. There's a challenge to it. It's almost like figuring out a problem for me. And that's where I've always, how am I going to play it? How do I play this? What finger I'm going to use? Okay. Oh, what's that rhythm? I don't hear that.
I think it's like I do a lot of programming. So I'm doing that all day on computer, and then I play the piano. I was like, I just want like free expression. But like with the production stuff, I love that. Like I think I'm a way better engineer than I am pianist. But also like I think I would be way happier producing music for other people than I would living in a van and touring full time. So like that is like the path that I'm giving more energy to. But I also love writing and performing and recording my own music. So they're completely like synergistically, they go great.
There's certain things I've learned as I've gotten older. One, I have no interest in touring. Like if I was to do a mini tour, it would be like, I'm going on a tour for a week and I'm going to stay in a nice hotel or something like that. It would not be getting in a van with 5 guys.
I like doing the 3-night runs. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then come back.
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, come back. Do the next weekend.
I don't even like doing that. Like before the pandemic.
Really?
There was a period of time when I played, and it's not even a lot. I don't even mind saying it out loud. I played 115 gigs that year.
Whoa.
I was trying to pay off my student loans, and which I did. Thank you. And it was, I don't know why anybody would ever want to play that much. It became Groundhog Day. I played on a Wednesday. I played on a Thursday. I played on a Friday. Blah, blah, blah. And it was just the same thing, and I was just like, I don't ever want to do this again.
Yeah.
Twice a week, I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, but
also like playing venues and trying to sell tickets. Like I want to play original music in ticketed venues. That's what I want to do.
Right.
To do that, you have to turn it into a social event somehow.
Yeah.
To do that, it has to be on a Friday or Saturday. So then like I see bands that like hop on the road and then I'm like, well, what are you doing playing in Utah on a Tuesday night? Like, there's no way you're comping the cost of that hotel.
Right.
Like that cannot offset.
Right.
But like if I were to do 3 nights through Georgia, 3 nights through South Carolina, 3 nights through Virginia, DC, and then 3 nights through like Appalachia, like you can make just doing weekends, you can do pretty good.
So do you want to do any of that touring stuff? Like you said, you would kind of want to do a 3-night
We played 30 shows last year.
Yeah.
And that, it stresses me out. But I also get like I have really bad anxiety when performing. I get like really bad stage fright. Not stage fright. I get like operational dread of like, there are so many things that I have to set up. I have to set up our in-ear rig. I want to make sure we're recording. I film every show. I record every show.
Oh, wow.
I want to make sure that everything's set up. I want to make sure the mix is dialed. I'm like caught up in like the minutia of every task that has to be executed rather than the music that I got to play. Also, like I lose my voice anytime I play more than 3 nights in a row. 2 nights in a row, even. I'll start losing my voice.
Yeah.
So then there's like all this stuff that's not the music. Or like, does everyone have a place to sleep tonight? Am I compensating the band well enough to make it worth their time? Can I justify us having 2 hotel rooms for 5 people instead of 3 hotel rooms? Like,
that's the hustle.
So, and then I get so caught up in that, and I also work full time on top of this.
Yeah.
So then it's like I don't have the mental capacity to do all of it. Yeah. So I want to do a lot less of everything this year.
Well, it's, I mean, people don't realize, and I've said it a billion times just on this podcast, talking to other musicians, the normal public doesn't realize that everything in music is almost compartmentalized. Performing is different than studio work, which is different than booking. Like to establish yourself.
I'm so grateful I have a lot of friends that are really good at booking. Yeah,
there's so much other stuff to manage, and in the day and age of the modern world, with the way the music industry is right now, you as the independent artist, you have to wear so many damn different hats.
You got to be a videographer and a social media design and a graphic designer. Yeah, it's
musician, studio production work. There's a lot. Oh my gosh, we're talking. My head is spinning of different things I want to talk about. So
okay,
let's drag it back for a minute. All right. First off, let's go back to the song when we listen to the song.
Yes.
Okay. So I love the fact that you used a lot of local musicians.
Only.
I am big on local Charlotte area musicians. you also have a video for the recording. Has that come out yet?
It's actually going to come out this Friday, so probably by the time this comes out.
So I should just, this will be out in the first week of February.
Oh yeah, it'll be out by listener. Ignoring the Feeling music video is out now.
Where will they be able to watch it, Joe?
YouTube.
Okay.
I think they gave me a Vivo channel. I've never done that. That's fancy now.
Is it going to be on your YouTube channel?
Yeah, it'll be on my YouTube channel, Joe May Music.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So check that out.
Did I send you the video?
You did. I watched
Did you see the ridiculous outro and everything?
I love it. I love it. That is so 80s.
Yeah.
Like, it is so 80s.
Well, we based the whole thing off of Ambrosia was on the Merv Griffin show in 1979. And we based a lot of like the set design and flow of the video based off of that talk show appearance.
That is fantastic.
And it's also like we're all clearly like it devolves through the video.
Yes.
Where like very much people are not playing their instrument and I'm clearly lip syncing and it gets worse as the video goes on. And it was like I was thinking about that Ambrosia video that they're lip syncing so like David Pack is not singing.
It's just blatant.
And then I think about like the classic like Ed Sullivan Beatles videos.
Yes.
I think about like there's that Mamas and Papas video where Michelle Phillips is like eating the banana during her vocal solo.
Yes.
So it's like I was saying, like budgets all time high, self awareness record lows.
Yes.
So like how can we and we're gonna go on a rant here.
No.
But there's a big thing that I've been thinking about lately, and I feel like I've been talking to everyone about it. That we have been forced into this era of like everything has to be mundane and relatable.
Yeah.
And like everything is like someone on Instagram like, look, I'm just a normal person like you. And everyone on NPR Tiny Desk is like, look, it's Justin Timberlake, but in a normal desk and he's just a normal guy. And I'm not saying that I'm not a normal person. I am exactly that.
Yeah.
But like whatever happened to like a little bit of like the creating a vision and a character and also like blurring the lines between reality, seriousness and comedy, like, or not knowing where someone's coming from. Like everything has to be so, or like people like telling a joke and then like people on Instagram being like, get it? Like making sure that everyone gets it. Like why did everything have to become so accessible? I kind of like the mystery and the allure.
Yes.
So this is kind of like a bit of like my love letter to that style of self-presentation.
But it's when younger folks, because you're definitely younger than me, are kind of starting to realize that, I think the worm starts to turn and things start to come back a little bit.
Go
where
watch.
Not everything's got to be, blatant.
Listener, go watch the Alice in Chains MTV Unplugged video.
That was great.
Lane Staley he's not of this earth. He's surrounded by 10,000 candles.
Yes.
Never once acknowledges the viewer. Like he's like looking at his feet the whole, and yes, he was dealing with a lot of his own. He's a complicated character, but there's something to me it's like a higher form of telling his story than like if he were to be on NPR Tiny Desk and being like, look at me, just a normal guy on Tiny Desk. It's I don't know. There's something cool about it. It's immersive.
Well, there's something, I think that time period was before anybody could do it. Like that grunge movement. So you come out of the 80s and everything was so over the top and extravagant.
Oh, yeah.
So you take bands and stuff, big makeup, big hair. It was, rock stars were super untouchable. And then you go into the grunge movement, and grunge starts to become the everyman. Like, I can go on stage with shorts. What? That's a thing?
Yeah.
You didn't go on stage with shorts before that. That's not what it was. And now you're in an age where creating your own music is accessible to everybody.
Yep.
And everybody has a voice via YouTube and Instagram and social media.
Totally.
And it's become so normalized.
Yeah.
And there's no big personalities like Elaine Staley anymore.
I think there are.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there are people at high levels doing cool stuff.
Like who? Who do you think? Who would you say?
Not
to pin you down.
Well,
sorry.
just right now, the band that popped in my head is the Sacred Souls. My buddy's on tour playing percussion with them right now.
Okay.
And they have such a cool visual dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Leon Bridges is great doing stuff at a really high level.
I'll have to check it out.
There's so much cool stuff happening right now.
Okay. Send me some stuff, man.
I'll send you.
Here's a list. Check these guys out.
I'll send you my playlist that
All
I was putting together of like artists that I'm currently inspired by.
Okay. Who did was jumping back, who did the video production to your song?
Josh Rob Thomas. He's the best. And we have another music video that's going to come out also later this year. He also filmed the show last week. I'm probably going to get him to film the show again, the album release show. Okay. We're doing a whole bunch. Video is a big part of what we're working on. He is the best. He's so good. We're also neighbors, so I just like can bop over to his house and drop off files. And, yeah, it's so he lives like 5 blocks from me.
Joe, leave me alone. I'm trying to sleep. But I have this idea.
We're on the 5th round of revision. Stop texting me, Joe.
So when you're doing a video like that, did you have to write did you write a script for it of what you wanted to do and how it came out, or did somebody come up with the idea for you?
Well, for the live performance, we knew we were going to play to the song. So I had the ideas, the things we were going to do. For the commercial at the end, like the IgnoreX product, I wrote the whole script for that.
Okay.
So I wrote the script, and then he put together some shot ideas. Yeah. And then we knocked it, like we were knocking stuff out quick. Like we moved pretty quick.
That's awesome, man. Where'd you film it?
We rented out the Visualite Theater.
Okay.
And shot everything there.
Wow.
So that was cool. That was an expensive single day. That was the most expensive single day I've ever had as a musician.
It's a good tax write-off. Hey, and in this day and age, I mean, those are things you can look for.
I was supposed to flip into the green this year, and that was not happen. It's definitely not going to happen this year with that release.
Well, what's that? I think the IRS says you got like 3 years of losing money, and then they call it a hobby.
Yeah.
So you got to turn a profit within a few years.
Yeah, that was this year.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I put it out there, man. See if they'll show some mercy on you.
No, I've got receipts for everything. I'm ready to go.
I know that feeling, man. I just keep everything.
I'm locked tight.
Everything's just. So let's get into Altamira.
Okay, my studio.
Yeah, man. We've been talking about production. So backtrack a little bit. We've been kind of going all over the place, which is a great conversation.
I don't believe in linear conversations or thoughts.
Well, it happens when you're in a conversation. Conversation just happens naturally, and that's a good thing. You know, you don't want to be like, I don't like to be scripted.
It's like jazz.
You know? Yeah, there's got to be a little free form in there.
There has to be free form in everything that I do. I'm such a neurotic, structured person that I need to break it. Mm-hmm. And then when I'm with when I'm alone, structure, compartmentalization, stratification everywhere. And then once I'm like playing, talking, moving, anything, I just embrace all the chaos.
That's a good thing, man. You got to do it, because if you don't, there's only one thing that's inevitable, and that's change.
Yeah,
it's never going to stay the same. You know, as much as you try to control it, things just kind of slip out.
So the studio is. How did this start? Well, it really started like 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. In my mind, I mean, I had like had a couple of preamps and interfaces, and I had enough to like record. I recorded our first Pluto Gang album with like a really cheap 8-channel interface. Okay. And that was enough. We just figured it out. I just had like a little Focusrite box, and we were able to track that, and I just learned so much. And then when I made my last album, I started getting into like vintage preamps and stuff like that, and using some outboard EQs. And I've been like working on that album for a while, just kind of like slowly, not lazily, but without like a clear drive. Yeah. And I've been like going out with this girl at the time. This would have been in like 2022 or 2023. And that ended. She like moved to New York, and then I was like, you know what? And I had roommates, and then I ended up like, one of the roommates moved to New Orleans. Okay. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to turn the whole house into a music studio, and I'm going to spend like the next couple of months. And I put like panels all over the walls. I built all the panels, figured out how to like connect and wire the rooms together. Wow. I created like a control room and a live room. Got all the lighting good so that like we could play in there and film in there. Got the sound dialed in. Damn. Got a lot of analog preamps, analog compressors, analog EQs. And then when I started working on this album, that was like really leaning into all that, where it was like, if I want the album to sound this way, I have to honor the tools that are historically used to get that sound. Right. So like, if I like the sound of hammers and nails, I should not be using screws and screwdrivers. so a lot of it was like learning that tool set, limiting myself to that tool set, and also I was practicing. I was recording a lot of other bands.
Sure.
So I would bring in a band, record the album for them, and all the money that I would get for recording and mixing their album, I would put it into
new gear.
So I would like tell them, I'd be like, all right, this is my rate, but like if you could pay some of it up front, I'm going to buy this compressor, this EQ, and I'll use it on your lead vocals, and you'll have this like classic 60s broadcast. And then it'd be like, awesome. And then I'd bring on another client. I'd be like, all right, now I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do your album, but then I'm also going to take everything that I made and put that into this set of EQs. So I was just like circularly investing in recording
gear,
for
man.
like a year and a half.
Absolutely.
And now I'm at a point where I'm like, no more new gear. I've got like 16 channels of great analog inputs.
Yeah.
Like, and I've got like the classic British 70s preamps. I've got like the very like EMI, tubey 50s sound. I've got like the American West Coast style preamps. Like all these classic things. And it's not like it's not necessarily just like retro fetishism either. It's also like our ears are used to hearing this gear.
Sure.
And
there's a lot of recordings out there.
There's a lot of recordings out there, and we're used to like the Neve preamp sound on vocals. We're used to like API drums. It's just become part of our sonic zeitgeist. And whether you know it or not, you've heard it a million times.
Right.
So being able to like honor that felt like a cool way to make the album sound the way I wanted it to sound. And also so that I had to do less work in the computer.
So when you start working and you start learning, so you backtrack, you start recording with Pluto Gang. You got this Focusrite. What's the DAW you're using at that?
Everything's in Ableton.
Ableton.
Yep.
Okay. So you're using Ableton, and then you record that album. Mm-hmm. How are you learning about the process of mixing and recording? Are you watching YouTube videos? Are you taking any courses? What are you doing? Because I having tried to just watch YouTube videos myself, I found it very frustrating, and I wound up finding a guy on YouTube, and I purchased some of his courses, which kind of like opened the world for me, and made me really understand what went into stuff.
I listen to a lot of my favorite producers talk. I listen to like the Recording Studio Rockstars podcast all the time. Lid Shaw, if you're listening, I want to be on your show. That's a great show. But it's also like mixing is philosophical. Mixing to me is a philosophical exercise. You can mix a song 1,000 ways.
Right.
So what are your philosophies on how to massage the sound? So I like learning other people's philosophies about mixing. But like the tools they're all interchangeable.
Right.
But I want to know how they're thinking. And that to me is valuable. And that is, ingrained with years of experiencing. I've been putting together my own philosophies based off of how I believe. Like I have like this list of things that I believe, and it's like my mixing credo somewhat.
Yeah.
But I mean, I would say to you or to anyone that wants to do it, if you want to figure out the thing, record a full band, especially with live drums. And then I just know what I don't like, and I know what I want it to sound like.
Right.
And then once I record it, I'm like, oh my God, there's way too much hi-hat in the snare drum, so I can't boost the high frequency on the snare. So how do I fix that? All right, now I've solved one problem. Then I fix that, and now I've got the snare where I want it to be, and then I'm like, oh, wow, like the snare is not nearly thuddy enough. The snare sounds great in my room. And then I leave, and I go listen somewhere else, and then now the snare sounds like it's 6 inches and tiny.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, wow, okay, now I've learned that my room has a big buildup of 106 hertz, which it does. And then I've taken care of that. Now my speakers pull that frequency out, so now I can listen better. And then I'm working on the bass, and I'm like, wow, I can't really hear below 60 hertz well in my room. So I figure that one out, and I learn how to work on that.
So you're not mixing in the box, essentially. You're doing a lot through speakers.
My process is that I record through analog preamps, and then I do a lot of compression and EQ on the way in.
Right.
I've got, like I said, 16 channels of preamps. I've got 6 channels of compression, analog, and I've got 2 EQs. Mm-hmm. So I can do a good bit on the way in.
Right.
Then I bring it into my DAW, which is Ableton,
Right.
And I have a template that has like a lot of parallel processing. So I do a lot of like parallel compression, parallel distortion, parallel EQ. I do a lot of like subharmonic synthesis too.
Right.
To get it like, I like things to be intense and in
Yeah.
your face. And then I do a lot of like my like more pokey EQ and distortion in the box. And then I mix it to a left right. And I do all of that in Ableton. And then it goes back out into analog again from my computer. And then I have a distortion, a compressor, an EQ, and some like spatial spreading that I do back in analog.
Okay.
And then I re-record it back as a final mix. And it is like a bit of a dance, and it's like whatever I record, that's in that pass through.
So, sorry to, I don't want listeners that all of a sudden we've turned into a mixing show, but
No,
this
yeah,
is a
it's
curiosity and I'm kind of interested in it too. So when you start to record, let's just say you have the guitar, you're recording, it's going through EQ and compression before it even gets into the DAW, you've
Yep.
EQ'd it. Cause that's normally, I don't want to say, it's different from what the way I've learned it, recording straight into the box, which is recording straight into the computer.
Yeah.
Where you record the sound and then you apply the EQ.
Yeah. But then if I did that, I'd spend 100 hours making the perfect bass tone. But if Jeremy's in the other room playing and I'm sitting in the control room and I can twist and I'm like, 3K sounds good on his bass.
Right.
Let's give him some 60 as well. Okay.
Right.
How much are we going to compress this? This sounds good. Done. Record.
Right.
And then now I've like made a decision and I can move on. We can keep being creative.
So that is more of a personal decision than a...
Yeah. Well,
or is that a technique with outboard gear?
yeah, it's a technique with outboard gear. I think it's honest to the type of music we're trying to make. I think it's like a bit of a classical, because that's the way they do a lot of this, especially with tape machines too, where they had like, they would lose a lot of the high end on tape. So they'd have to like push it into the tape machine. Yeah. So like, they're just like tools that we don't need anymore, but I want to do them.
Right.
Because I like that. And it's a little, it keeps you creative. And it's like, I sometimes struggle with decision making. So it's like, do it in the room, decide it, move on.
Right.
Go play.
Because, I mean, for the listener, that's just kind of, when you're recording, you want a good basic sound.
Yeah.
When you record so that you have something solid.
What about recording the final sound?
What do you mean recording the final sound for that particular instrument?
Yeah, and then don't touch it again.
That's always tough because you have to mix that. Some people mix it solo, and then you have to get it in with the entire band. And so that might change a little bit. It's not...
Yeah, a little bit.
I was playing for a friend of mine yesterday, as a matter of fact. So we were checking out this bass line from Stone Temple Pilots to Interstate Love Song.
So good.
Guy, I really appreciate DeLeo now. He's great harmonizer and songwriter, not to mention bass player. But so we're listening, and I believe the isolated track was the actual track on the song.
Cool.
So I'm playing it for my friend. He goes, "Why does that bass sound like crap?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "There's a lot of distortion on it." I was like, "Because that's his sound." He's like, "Why would you do that?" I said, "Well." And then I put the song on. I was like, when you listen to the song, do you hear the distortion? He's like, no. I was like,
through.
Yeah, I was like, it fattens up the song.
That's cool.
And it gives a different kind of sound to it. So the recording, what you do in the recording might be different than the end product. You might add some extra spice on it.
I like getting a little spicy in the, so I just did an EP for Nathan Harris. Okay. Really good guitarist. You should definitely have him on. He's a virtuosic guitarist.
Okay.
And he's written so many songs, but we were recording these 4 songs. We came in, we cut it live, we brought a bunch of people in the room that had never heard the song before.
Okay.
And then we worked on it, and then we tracked it, and then like overdubbed vocals and solos, and we're done. And like we were getting guitar tones, and we were pushing some aggressive sounds. And he was like, I remember we were cutting, he's like, "Hey, I think we went too far. Like that guitar sound is really intense and aggressive.
Yeah.
Like, is that really what we're going to track? Like, should I back off?" And I was like, let's go too far. Let's go too far.
See what that sounds like.
And then hear what it sounds like. And then we did it. And then and that's the cool thing, the tracking the way we are. Like, I'm tracking it, I drop it into my template and like turn the volume up.
Yeah.
And then we were like, oh, this is a rock tune.
Yeah.
This is a rock tune. And it was cool. But that was like in the room. We were like doing it on the amp and then like pushing the amp really hard. We put it in a different room and we were just killing that thing.
That's great.
And then when I was recording it, I had 2 stages of preamps, and I turned one all the way up and one all the way down, and it was just like 20 dB beyond red line.
So you right now are ahead of me because I'm still loving. No. I still love mixing. I'm still learning and really enjoying learning mixing on the computer with all plugins and things like that.
It's just hard.
You have gone old school, and you like. I think the physical touching and,
it makes
and
sense
control.
to me. Yeah. I was talking to my friend Cole about this. I think I really struggle to grasp a lot of like what compression and EQ does when it's like a screen and it's like a million options and I can put the point everywhere. But I was talking about like when I got my first like Nord keyboard and there was like a compressor knob and an EQ knob, I could like twist it and be like, oh, I hear the difference.
Right.
But it's sometimes I think like the mouse isn't always good for the way that I like grasp things.
Right.
So like I feel like I was playing with them for years and I never quite fully understood it.
I still
and then once I could touch it, I was like, oh, I understand what this is doing. Like on your amp, like you've got this bass amp right here, like playing through it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, what? Like the mid range sounds good on the bass.
Yeah.
You can twist that up. So.
It's different. I mean, I actually, when I would use a EQ where I could see everything, it's great to when you're starting out, and I've moved to an SSL plugin.
Yeah, the best.
And you're like, oh, and it kind of changed the sound of everything I was mixing at that point.
Totally.
But then I also learned that maybe you shouldn't use that particular EQ on everything. Maybe you use an SSL on the drums, but on the guitar, you're going to use a more modern thing, a Pro Fab EQ or something like that, something different to get a different sound so that it changes and not everything's flat and the same.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just a huge learning curve, and I like that you've gone to the outboard gear. Was there are you using a regular big, large mixing board now?
No, it's just all my computer does that.
That's great.
It would be so much work to have to recall the settings for every song.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
And was it a learning, how bad was the learning curve starting to use outboard gear to go into like,
It's pretty
EQ?
intuitive. I mean, like, I understand computers.
Yeah.
And I work with a lot of electrical engineers. So like a lot of that just kind of made sense.
Right.
So it was fairly intuitive for me. But I think I also like the technical world and I like routing and electronics. So it was like, I think I already had a good baseline to be open to it.
I mean, there's just so much to learn. I mean, like I said,
so
you go
fun.
down a rabbit hole.
Come over. We'll have fun.
I'm definitely going to have to come check out your spot, man. I would love to see it.
It's awesome. Sometimes I have to fight to leave the room.
And this is what I'm talking about. You start doing music and you start going down different rabbit holes. Like I find myself at this moment, I'm in 4 or 5 different spaces. I'm learning new songs for my solo acoustic. I'm learning oud and I'm writing backing tracks to perform maybe and do some restaurant work like with that. And then I'm like, as I'm writing the backing tracks, I'm telling my buddy in New York, I'm like, I find myself, even though the first one, I can write it off. It's my first time doing a backing track.
Yep.
But I want to start now learning how to orchestrate so I can add strings and I can do all this other stuff to it.
Have like triggers and stuff.
And there's a whole like different world that you start entering in music to understand all this kind of stuff. And then I'm like, well, I need a new plugin because this one doesn't sound very good as a violin. This sounds like crap. I'm going to need to buy this plugin so that I get more of a real, it's like, it's in a sense, it's exhausting, but it's so fun.
Yeah.
It is amazing when you get to a point where I'm like, I don't need to be the greatest guitar player in the world. I can fill my artistry or that artistic need doing all these other things.
Yeah. I'm a technical guy, so I get a lot of fulfillment out of technical work.
Yeah.
And it's a really quick, there's this sensation that I think about all the time. And my dad tells me that's the feeling of when you're connecting neural pathways. And I get this feeling when things are really clicking, I'm feeling really inspired, really discovering a lot of good things, where I feel like I'm seconds away, moments away, just right around the horizon from discovering like the grand truth that will make everything in life and existence make sense. Of course, you never find it, right?
Right.
My buddy, so he says that life is asymptotic. You like infinitely approach lines but never touch them. You can only like, it's like a Newtonian calculus concept.
Yeah.
Of like the way that like a curve infinitely comes close to it but never touches it. So when I'm learning production and I'm producing and I'm dialing in mixes, I get this feeling, this like deep like, oh my God, it's about to click. I'm about to understand everything. Life will make sense. There will be order to the forms. There will be structure in the chaos. There will be a clear path. Like I'm about to reach it. And like I sometimes I get that way with my yoga practice. I get that way with some things. And it's cool. That's a good feeling for me.
But what's the phrase? Is it perfection is the enemy of greatness or something like that? And
it's not perfection. This is like, I'm talking about like fulfillment.
I look at it like this in the sense of, I get you what you're saying. I think I understand. You have a ceiling. And I think a lot of artists or people pursuing something, they want to reach a level of real proficiency and being really good at something. And there's people who are very scared to do that. They don't want to try because they're afraid of failure. But there are people who are able to try. And if you really work hard enough, you may not get to that level and hit that level that you want to be at. Yeah. But damn, if you come close,
so
you've got this whole thing like you came from the bottom up and you learned so much.
Oh, that's cool. I always think of it, to me, it feels like a descent. Like I call it like diving off the cliff.
No.
More so than like us like reaching something.
Oh yeah.
To me, it's like especially when I'm with my band, I say like before every show, I was like, "Are y'all ready to dive off a cliff, arm in arm?"
No, it's to me.
Then like you catch flight.
Well, you're there because you're not going to come down.
Yeah.
Once you get there, it's.
But you got to jump.
Yeah, you do have to. There is that jump. There is that, but a lot of people don't want to take that jump.
Oh, that's the fun part.
It is to me.
That's the best.
That
part.
is the perfect. That's where I love, man.
Yeah, that's the thrill. That's like getting on a bike and riding real fast.
Yeah.
It's
because you don't know where it's going to lead, and you don't know how good you can. You'll never know how good you're going to be at something unless you try, and you know going in if you are willing to say, "I am going to suck at this."
Yep.
I am going to suck. But nobody's lives are going to get lost.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to suffer injury. I can just try. Man, like, I think back to when you started audio recording. I think back to when I started audio recording. I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
You know, and now I'm kind of like, I'm not great, but I'm starting to get the basics. And I'm starting to understand how everything works.
It's very funny though. Like, I mean, as a person, I have a lot of fear and anxiety and panic around like, how I show up, how people perceive me, how I exist in places, how I interact with people. I've completely barely holding it together in some of those regards, but with like internal quests and voyages or anything that's tactile, creative, I think I'm completely fearless. I don't even think about these things that you're talking about because I just go and do it.
Right.
But then when it comes to like sharing it, or like putting the music out, or like figuring out who I'm gonna be when people listen to it.
Right.
Oh, that's like like total neuroses. But this like the quest of discovery and doing it is like that's the escape for me.
But it's still the same.
Oh yeah, it's just in a different place.
Yeah, because if you like, if I was going to ask you, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What do you want to happen?
World domination.
And what happens if it doesn't get there? Will you still be happy that you've learned so much in this journey of writing and recording? Because here's a catch. I think I asked somebody, and I've started asking people on the podcast this.
Yeah.
And again, you're still a little bit younger than me.
It is going to happen though.
I hope it does. I hope I see your name plastered over the place and you are selling out stadiums and you are living your dreams. I really do. But the catch is that the journey there is what life is all about to me.
Yeah.
And if you don't hit that spot, like we said, You know, if you don't hit that world domination spot, would you be happy just have dominated the United States?
I think I'd be miserable if it actually did happen. Now I'm like releasing this album and like starting the release stuff and getting it out there and marketing and promo.
Yeah.
My mind is already, I'm like, God, I want to record the next one.
Yeah.
Because the fun is the doing it.
Yeah.
Once I'm like putting it out and trying to like market it and make it commercial, I kind of drive myself a little nuts.
So being my point, one question, where you're at musically at this point.
Yeah.
Would younger Joe have looked at Joe at this point and said, I didn't think you'd get this far?
I never even thought it was an option.
Isn't that wonderful?
It's pretty darn cool if you ask me.
Yeah.
That's why I've just been like the show that we played last week. Like I have not processed any of that at all. I mean, the Visual Light Theater was like packed. I've never seen that. And I walked out. The first thing I said when I got on stage, and it's weird too because it's got my name on the project.
Right.
Like I walked out on the stage, I saw everyone. I like took a big breath, grounded myself a little bit. I like got on the mic and I was like, I don't know what to say. And whatever came out of my mouth was like, y'all, I don't know this many people. Like,
that's
how did all y'all get here?
That's awesome, and that is what I love about being a local musician. People know you're a local guy, you know, and you might have people coming from a different town to come check you out. They know your reputation from Pluto Gang, you know, and you might have touched a whole lot of people you didn't know.
It's so cool. Yeah, if you're listening and I don't know you, come hang out. Let's. It's way more fun when we're all friends.
There you go. That's the way it should be.
That's what I was like listening to a podcast just last night, and he was talking about like his band, and he was talking about how they never have opening bands because they don't want to interface with anyone, and they don't want anyone to see them on the stage. They don't ever go out into the crowd. He's like, I want to be completely mysterious until we walk out onto the stage. Like completely unrelatable, out of touch, out of like.
That's one way.
And I was like, I was thinking about that. I was like, oh man, I don't do any of that. And then I was like, wait, I reject that so deeply. Mm-hmm. I want to be like hugging everyone that's there and like, like I'm grateful for you. This is cool. You're a huge part of my life. Like, let's do this together.
Was that a newer artist who said that or an older artist?
He's in like a very successful, like tribute band.
Okay. I was going to say, because old school.
Yeah.
For, let's say, for example, bands that I grew up with in the 80s and listened to, you would never get in touch with them. You were lucky if you joined their fan club and wrote a letter.
Yeah.
But now with social media, I went to go see a couple of years ago the Black Crowes. They were on tour.
Yep.
And their guitar was with them, Isaiah Mitchell, and he was fantastic.
Okay.
Found him on social media, sent him an Instagram message, and said, "Hey, Isaiah, I just wanted to let you know, man. Saw you with Black Crowes. You were amazing.
Yep.
You've made a new fan. Thanks, dude. A lot of people, everybody around me was buzzing, just incredible." Dude texted me back, said, "Thanks so much, man.
Yep.
I really appreciate that."
Yep.
And I was like, I just keep following whatever he does, man.
Mm-hmm.
He's into like some other music now. I texted him. I was like, dude, that sounds great. You got a recording coming out? He's like, not yet. It'll be out soon. I was like,
it costs no mental energy to make a connection and express gratitude.
Yeah.
I believe that so wholeheartedly. It actually doesn't cost. It gives mental energy.
I think the world has changed. It's a completely different thing for musicians. Now your bread and butter might be going and meeting people and replying and texting and getting to know them. Getting to know them the way, you can as an artist to fans. They're not going to become your best friends because you might not have grown up with them. It's somebody that you've known for 20 years. But you can get to know fans in a different way. And they're going to be like, you got to go see Joe A.
But what I'm talking about is like a local show where it's your community.
Yeah.
That is the coolest stuff. Yes. And like there are other musicians in the crowd and I'm like, I'm going to go see them live this weekend.
Yeah.
And then like, that's cool.
I love going to see local people play.
Yep.
As we talked about earlier, compartmentalize. I try to go see, solo acoustic people play, as much as I can. And I've I got into ambient music lately, and another friend of mine, Elizabeth Kowalski, who does shows, Elizabeth was playing. Yeah, she was doing an ambient thing. I was like, I'm going to stop by, and she was like, oh, you just came by. I'm like, yeah.
Nice.
I was like, I loved going to see what people are doing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you know the pain. Being a musician, I'm usually playing on a Friday or Saturday night, so I don't get to go see everybody, that I want to see, it was kind of sad. So if you're doing the thing in May, shoot me an email in advance so I can come out and
Will do.
And check it out. Next question I want to get to,
Okay.
being that this is the world we live in, how are you navigating social media for your solo stuff? How do you navigate that?
Hire really good photographers and videographers.
Yeah.
And they can put together really immersive stuff. And then I don't go crazy staying up till 3 a.m. editing videos.
You're not worried about putting out the perfect thing. Oh, I got to put out my breakfast, and so people know what I ate for breakfast or junk like that.
Does anyone? Oh, I can't curse. Does anyone give a gosh darn what I had for breakfast? I'll tell you, I have the same thing every morning. I have a little bit of kefir, and 2 eggs, and some chili oil, and it's great. Every day, the same thing.
You're kind of an Einstein in that. You got to have the same thing. Einstein used to have the same clothes or something like that. I think so.
Yeah.
There are people like that.
Again, I don't care about this, like, oh, look at how normal, look at how relatable I am, Instagram thing. Oh, day in the life with me while I go get dressed and change clothes. No one cares about what I'm doing. But if I'm like working really hard and I have a fully fledged, fully mature vision of an artistic product, I'm going to share that artistic product.
Yeah.
And if I have stories to tell, I will tell those stories. If I think there's something cool with the way I produce something, I will tell that story. But like, God, like if people are so obsessed with trying to be normal and relatable, if you want to be normal and relatable, go hang out at a coffee shop and make friends with the 6 people that are sitting there that you've never talked to. Like,
there you go.
Like, I'd just so rather do that authentically than give a virtual guise of authenticity. Like, it misses the mark for me.
It sounds kind of fake.
I will not be doing any get ready with me videos or what did I have for breakfast or make coffee with me videos.
Well, that's a nice breath of fresh air, man.
That's not my path.
I think in a world of social media, I think people are starting to wake up to the fact that it doesn't mean anything. Like it's almost just a advertisement, because you could go on social media.
Oh, I am advertising.
No, I'm not saying you're not. But I'm saying people put stuff, and the way I try to walk through life is not everybody needs to know everything. You know, I don't need to tell everybody I went to a wedding this weekend. I don't need to post pictures of me and my girlfriend on, an adventure that we went on. I don't need to tell somebody that, this family member passed away and I don't need all that. That's not my life. And
I really don't need to know how many of my favorite musicians are covert Nazis and white nationalists.
Yeah.
I just don't tell me that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't,
and
I don't need to know everybody's political opinion. You know, it's like,
there's a lot of bad ones too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad ones.
Yeah. I mean, just do what you want to do, but to me, social media is a thing. It's just fun. It's just like if you go to my Instagram account, it's just music stuff. Occasionally I'll post something like, hey, I went on I went up to Grandfather Mountain and these are the pictures I took. It's not like my whole life, it's fun. And I think people lose that. Unfortunately for musicians, in the age of being an independent musician, man, you maybe you post stuff like, hey, we're in the recording studio. Here's what's going on. That kind of stuff. I mean, those are kind of things people who follow you like to see what's going on with music. So I always like to ask that because I always find out, where people are at with it. Are you keeping up like with your webpage? Do you have to manage that all yourself, or do you hire people to take care of it?
I do everything.
Oh, it's such a bear, isn't it?
Well, I like web design. And I do Squarespace. Like, I'm pretty decent at HTML and CSS. Yeah. But with Squarespace, I don't have to do any of that.
Right.
But I can also, I know enough to, hide stuff on there. So it's cool.
I like it. I mean, there's certain fun things I like doing.
Yeah.
One of my favorites is actually going and doing, a photo shoot. Like, I find that just a blast. I'm
Oh, yeah, it's
you
great.
get to play rock star, and you're like, look at this. I'm holding this guitar. I'm doing this.
Oh,
I'm doing this.
I get so stuffed up, and
You know?
there's a word in Portuguese. I don't know the word in English. In Portuguese, you say you get encabulado. It's like when you like get like wrapped up in yourself, and you're not fully like confident in yourself.
Yeah.
Photo shoots do that to me. I get totally. I wish you could see the gesture that I'm making.
I've watched too many rock stars where I'm just like, you just got to be, out there and just do your thing, and just who cares? Because even the stupidest thing, there's pictures I've taken at a couple of photo shoots, and I'm like, oh, this is just stupid. And then I see it in a picture, and you're like, damn, that looks really good.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. So
I like taking pictures with a band or a collective, but that's also a way for me to pull the eyes off of myself a little bit.
that's good.
So
Well, there's that part of being an artist where you have to put on the persona when you're
Yeah.
on stage, and then a lot of us are really quiet people. We're not like verbose people.
Yeah.
We put that into the music and maybe on stage, and not as our person.
I think I'm a pretty loud person. I don't want to have any persona. I'm a big believer in what I call radical authenticity. I will be my most excited, happy self on stage because I love playing this stuff. You're never going to see me. I'm never going to be kicking around. I'm never going to be flailing. I'm never going to be rolling around on the floor. Like I see, I'm going to start spitting out hot takes now. Anytime I see like a guitarist like rolling around on the floor, kicking or head banging,
Yeah.
the first thing I think is like, wow, they're really not confident in the notes that they're playing, are they? They really don't think they're playing good music, so they're distracting me.
It
And I
depends.
understand that it's theatrics, and I understand that people like that, but it's definitely not for musicians. It's for consumers. So I
Well-
will not be doing that.
It depends on what you're doing, and it depends on what style, because music performance is a visual art. You're going to see. If,
I'm actually only recently learning that. I've rejected that for a long time.
Yeah.
And now I've been having the band dress like with like a similar theme. And I'm
Oh,
like, this
yeah.
makes a world of difference.
Oh, my God,
And
yeah.
I've always rejected that.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, the music comes first. The music always comes first. But then I've learned if you want to sell tickets, it's not musicians with their eyes shut.
Yeah. I mean, you can't stand on stage and just stare at the floor and play your parts really well, because nobody cares. There's a reason some of these rock bands are jumping around on stage.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cause that's what people are paying to see. They want to see you move,
Yep.
a little bit at least,
It's all Mick Jagger's fault.
Hey, look, you can blame Kiss. You can go back and blame them for these big, massive stage
Yeah,
shows and
exactly.
firebombs and everything else. Well,
My dad grew up in Eastern Kentucky, and they had the pastor come to their house when my dad was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
and get all the demons out of my dad's room. And they saw the Kiss poster, and the pastor was like, "I've heard of this. This stands for Knights in Satan's Service." And they basically what's the word? They exorcised my dad's bedroom.
oh my gosh.
But then he ended up going to jazz school, so I think the pastor.
And on a certain level, that was bad music back then too, in its own time. Anyway, so Joe, if you want to start wrapping stuff up, you've got
Yep.
the single that's currently out.
Ignoring the Feeling, out now. It was released on January 16th. The music video will come out on January 31st. Next release to look out for, Halfway to the Edge, coming to streaming platforms near you.
Fantastic. And if we want to get in touch with Joe May, how do we do that?
It is Joe May Music everywhere. YouTube, Joe May Music. Facebook, Joe May Music. Instagram, Joe May Music. Twitter, X. Don't go there. The guy that owns that, horrible human being. TikTok, Joe May Music. YouTube, Joe May Music. JoeMayMusic.com. Joe May Music Gmail.
There you go.
There you go.
Joe, a pleasure having you back, man. I appreciate it. So good to see you, dude.
Thank you, my friend.
Much success.
It's good to just chop it up with you on this stuff. It's fun.
Awesome. Take care, bro. Thanks for listening to episode 83 of the Queen City Music Podcast, and I hope you'll go back and check out past episodes. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends. As always, if you have an idea for an episode or would like to be a guest on the QCMP, please reach out to me at qcmusicpodcast@gmail.com. Also, check out our local partners, Records on the Wall at rexonthewall.com, Reporting from 20XX at reportingfrom20xx.wordpress.com, Queen City Live at instagram.com/Queen City Live Music. Charlotte New Music at charlottenewmusic.org, and our newest local partner, Blacker the Berry Lemonade at btblemonade.com. Until next month, get out there and support the local Charlotte music scene by hearing some of the talented artists who call our city home. Bye.